Good morning, all of you. In the last class, we had started with DPSP. Yes. So we have discussed the nature of DPSP. Yes, that it is non-legally enforceable and non-justiciable. Yes. As such, both of them can be overlappingly used. है ना? इतना कोई difference नहीं है in these two phrases. But just to be very clear exactly what it means. So what does it mean when we say legally non-enforceable? In case the government does not implement these policies, we do not have the right to approach the court to get it implemented, because legally the government is not bound to enforce these policy guidelines or whatever it is. And what do we mean when we say it is non-justiciable? It means that these portions of the constitution cannot be enforced by the judiciary. So as such, overlappingly used, but just for the sake of clarity of the two words, we define it clearly. Fine? Fine. So we have discussed its nature, why it was kept as non-justiciable, non-enforceable, and does it reduce the importance of DPSP? So we found that no, it does not reduce the importance of DPSP. There is a moral force behind its enforcement. Public opinion is going to force the politicians, the party in power, to enforce it, because the government cannot expect re-election until and unless it has implemented DPSPs going forward. Yes, in fact, the Constitution itself, and I had mentioned Article 37 of the Constitution itself, says that DPSP, though non-enforceable, non-justiciable, shall be shall be fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be duty of the state to apply these principles in making the laws, in formulating the policies for the country. Fine, so this is what we have studied. Fine. Fine. DPSP I had not sent. Fine, no problem there. Next, let us briefly discuss classification of DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy. So we classify the DPSP under 3 heads. Yes. So there are liberal policies or guidelines, then socialist guidelines, and the Gandhian guidelines. Yes, so we are not as of now exhaustively discussing the DPSPs. Yes, we are not going into the details of all the DPSPs that have been listed under the Constitution. However, we are seeking to broadly classify. This is the broad classification that you tend to find of the DPSP. Yes, so the numerous DPSPs that have been mentioned, we can classify them as under liberal principles or liberal guidelines, certain socialist guidelines, and certain Gandhian guidelines. That the Constitution has suggested for the Constitution makers to follow. Fine. So what would be the liberal policies or guidelines? You can write it down as we discuss. Yes, draw the classification as I have drawn, and under it we'll give a few examples of few DPSPs mentioned. Under liberal principles, you can mention uniform civil code. So the government, according to DPSP, is bound to implement uniform civil code. Yes. Implement uniform civil code. Second would be provide early education, primary education, provide primary education. Third is promote international peace, promote international peace, promote international peace, and abide by, and abide by, and abide by international law. Yes. So these are few examples of the liberal policies or liberal guidelines suggested by DPSP, suggested under the DPSP. Next is the socialist guidelines. Yes, under socialist guidelines you can mention the constitution suggests prevention of concentration of wealth, prevention of concentration of wealth, prevention of concentration of wealth. Second would be provide minimum wages. Yes, so provide certain minimum wages. Another example can be provide free legal aid to the poor. Free legal aid to the poor. Free legal aid to the poor. Yes, so these are some of the socialist principles, socialist guidelines suggested under DPSP. Then the Gandhian guidelines. Under Gandhian guidelines, write down promote Panchayati Raj institutions. Promote Panchayati Raj institutions. Promote Panchayati Raj institutions. Promote cottage industries. Promote cottage industries. Ban alcohol. Third would be ban alcohol. Yes. And fourth is ban butchering of ban butchering of kettles and milch. Milch means milk giving, milch animals. Milch animals. Fine. So this is broad classification. There is no such classification mentioned under the Constitution. Yes, please mind it, be clear. No such classification has been mentioned as part of the Constitution. But to ease ourselves into studying and remembering DPSPs, we tend to classify DPSPs into certain liberal policies that the DPSP seeks to promote, certain socialist policies that the DPSP seeks to promote, and certain Gandhian policies or Gandhian ideas that DPSP seeks to promote. Fine. As far as DPSP is concerned, also mention, write down, write down, under classification itself, we are just mentioning it. Write down DPSP lists It lists three main things. DPSPs lists three main things. Certain goals and objectives that the society should adopt. Certain goals and objectives that the societies should adopt. For example, promote welfare of the people. Raise a standard of living. Third, prevent concentration of wealth. Fourth, promote international peace. Yes. Second thing which it lists is the second thing that it lists is, one is this goals and objectives that the society should adopt. So it is the socialist guidelines that the constitution, society, as a society, what we should think of, and a prevention of concentration of wealth, that we should abide by international law. Yes. So society in larger context, if you were to pull it further, तो आप गवर्नमेंट भी कह सकते हो कि गवर्नमेंट को क्या करना चाहिए, है ना, तो वो बता रहा है. यस. Certain rights that individuals should enjoy, beyond those mentioned under fundamental rights. Certain rights that individuals should enjoy beyond those, या apart from those mentioned under fundamental rights. For example, right to work, equal pay for equal work, for men and women. Next point, early childhood care, and right to primary education. And last, certain policies that the government should adopt, certain policies that the government should adopt. For example, implement uniform civil code. Uniform Civil Code. Promotion of village panchayats. Promotion of village panchayats. Comma, cottage industries. Cottage industries. Cottage industries. Yes. Yes, these are some of the policies that the government should also try and promote. Fine. So these are the different ways we classify. This classification that I have mentioned lists three main things, is actually mentioned as part of the NCRT. Yes, so I want you to be aware, because in prelims these days NCRTs have become very, very important. Yes, and in this context, if they were to put forward that DPSP suggests the following things, you should not miss out on that question. Yes, there should be clarity. Yes, DPSP is suggesting such things. As such, what we have mentioned, it seeks to promote liberal principles, socialist guidelines, and Gandhian principles. Fine, तो वहाँ पे fine, we classify DPSP as such for the sake of ease of learning, है ना? There is no such classification mentioned in the Constitution. We can also say that it lists down certain goals and objectives for the society should adopt. Promotion of standard of living, prevention of concentration of wealth, and promotion of international peace, all such things that the society should actually, and this is how the society should be. There should be socio-economic justice in the society. Yes, so these are certain principles that the societies should adopt. Then certain rights that should be enjoyed by the individuals: right to work, right to adequate livelihood, right to equal pay for equal work, and gender pay parity. All such things should be certain rights that we all individuals should have, which are not mentioned or which are not legally enforceable under the Constitution. And certain policies which the government should adopt, such as promotion of PRIs, promotion of cottage industries, banning consumption of alcohol. Yes, these are certain DPSPs, and promotion of Panchayati Raj institutions. These are certain DPSPs mentioned. And provide free legal aid to the poor. Yes, these can be examples of certain policies that the government should adopt. Fine. So this is how we tend to classify DPSP. This is how we tend to study DPSP. So before we proceed further, there is a question by Ayush. Ayush says, what is the difference between fundamental rights and legal rights? Are legal rights statutory rights? See, in the last class, I had drawn a classification. Yes, we had mentioned legal rights. Legal rights we classified as rights mentioned under the Constitution, so constitutional rights, and non-constitutional या extra constitutional, which are not mentioned in the Constitution. Yes. And then I said constitutional rights are also of two types: fundamental rights, rights which are not mentioned under fundamental rights, under part 3 of the Constitution. Yes, and then certain other non-constitutional rights, and these rights have been given to us through legislation, through laws. तो इनको हम स्टैट्यूटरी राइट्स भी बोलते हैं. Yes, fine. So this was the classification that I gave you. Now see, these rights, the statutory rights, are they legal rights? Yes, they are legal rights. They have been given to us through laws. See, all these rights, be it constitutional or be it extra constitutional, all of them are legal rights. These have been given to us by law. Yes. Now law Constitution में mentioned है या legislature ने enact किया है, that is the only difference. Just to have clarity. Yes, you have some doubt? Yes. Yes, DPSP has been enforced by making laws by the Parliament. तो नाउ सी, अब वही है, डीपीएसपी को एक नॉर्मल लेजिस्लेशन लेकर आना है. Supposedly we need to bring a normal legislation. One of the DPSP is prevention of concentration of wealth. So very early on there was this idea that yes, we need to prevent concentration of wealth in the society, and one of the very first act of the government of India was to abolish zamindari rights. Now when they chose to bring a law to abolish zamindari rights, it was a law to abolish zamindari right. सिंपल मेजोरिटी चाहिए लेजिस्लेशन के लिए, क्योंकि कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो अमेंड नहीं कर रहे थे पर से, है ना. तो अगर हमें राइट टू वर्क, एमजी नरेगा प्रोवाइड्स यू, है ना, सम अमाउंट ऑफ राइट टू वर्क, है ना, कि है ना. तो पंचायती राज का अलग केस है क्योंकि हमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंड करना पड़ा वहां पे, ठीक है. तो इट वाज नॉट अ नॉर्मल लेजिस्लेशन पर से. लेकिन यहाँ पे जैसे अब राइट टू वर्क हमें करना है, तो राइट टू वर्क एनफोर्स करने के लिए दे थॉट दैट दे विल ब्रिंग अ लॉ नोन एज एमजी नरेगा. यस, सो इन दैट केस सिंपल लेजिस्लेशन से आ जाएगा. टू एनफोर्स अ डीपीएसपी इफ दे हैव टू ब्रिंग अ लॉ, इट विल कम थ्रू सिंपल लेजिस्लेशन, है ना. जरूरी नहीं है कि वी नीड any special majority for that matter. But if it requires amendment, for example abolition of zamindari rights, yes, तो ये normal legislation से ले आया government. But later on it was contested in the Supreme Court, in the courts, saying that it violates right to property. So in that case a constitutional amendment was required. Yes, so that is the idea. So until and unless you are not amending the constitution per se and you are enforcing DPSP, there is, it can be passed through simple legislation, है ना, through simple majority, simple law making exercise. Fine, so that is the idea. Please be clear, है ना. Yes, so difference between fundamental rights and legal rights, if I were to tell you, fundamental rights are a subset of the legal rights. Do you understand? This is the larger chunk known as legal rights. Subset of it is fundamental rights. Then certain non-fundamental rights mentioned in the constitution also we'll consider. Legal constitution बोल रहा है इस बारे में. Yes, such as right to property. अब इसमें हम DPSP नहीं गिन रहे, है ना. When we are talking about rights mentioned under the constitution but not under fundamental rights, we are not talking about DPSP. DPSP is not a right which has been bestowed on us. For it to become a right, there has to be through legislation. Yes, so that is the idea. So यहाँ पे हमने क्या examples दिया था? For example, right to property. It has been brought out of fundamental right, but it is mentioned under the constitution. Right to universal adult franchise. Everybody above the age of 18 has the right to vote. Yes, so you have such rights which are given through the constitution but not necessarily mentioned under the fundamental right or part 3 of the Indian constitution. So this is the difference if I were to tell you. Fundamental rights are a subset of legal rights. Yes, all these are subset, extra constitutional rights or rights which have been given to us through ordinary legislation. तो इसको हम specifically बात करेंगे तो ये है statutory rights because they have been given to us through statutes. Statutes का मतलब क्या है? Law, है ना. Simple law enacted by the Indian Parliament have been the source of these rights. So ये statutory rights है, but otherwise they are all legal rights. Yes, I hope it is clear. There are few more questions. Are legal rights ordinary rights and statutory rights? What is the difference between fundamental rights and DPSP? We'll get into it. Yes, yes, I think so explained that fundamental rights are a subset of the legal rights. Yes, fine, that is the idea. सब इन सारे राइट्स, लीगल राइट्स मतलब इन सारे राइट्स का सोर्स क्या है? देयर इज सम लीगल प्रोविजन विच इज द सोर्स ऑफ दीज राइट्स, है ना. लीगल प्रोविजन, है ना. Yes, they are enforceable in court, but you need not directly have the right to approach the Supreme Court. That is a privilege reserved for fundamental rights. Only in case of violation of fundamental rights can we go directly to the Supreme Court. But a right which has been given through ordinary legislation, of course, in case it is violated, then what do we do? It is not a right. We have discussed, for a claim to become right, it has to be legally enforceable, it has to be reasonable, है ना, and legally enforceable. हमने 3 पढ़े थे उसमें. Yes, so of course all the rights are legally enforceable, be it fundamental right, be it rights under the Constitution not included under fundamental rights chapter, or the statutory rights for that matter. Not every kind of right is a legal right now. हाँ, ये लीगल राइट्स है जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल, कुछ ऐसे भी है नेचुरल राइट्स, जरूरी नहीं है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, एज पार्ट ऑफ आवर सोसाइटी सम कस्टमरी राइट्स, लेकिन जरूरी नहीं है ना कि उस राइट को हमेशा लीगल प्रोविजन, लीगल अथॉरिटी, स्टेट इज समवेयर इन्वॉल्व्ड इन एनफोर्सिंग दोज राइट्स एंड मेंशनिंग दोज राइट्स, क्योंकि सोर्स ऑफ राइट कैन बी आवर सोसाइटी. In my house, in my household, I might have certain privileges that I enjoy, which I claim as my right. हाँ, ये तो this is what I get, है ना. In a patriarchal society, generally men have more rights than women, है ना. That is socially social privileges that have been extended to us. Yes, so अब वो तो they claim it, they enjoy it as if it is a matter of their right, that men should be maybe served first the dinner, what is left generally, and पहले, आज के दिन तो इतना नहीं, but maybe in the villages it is still practiced, whatever was left women would later on eat, first men in the family would eat. Yes, all such things were enjoyed as right. So हम generally नहीं कहेंगे कि हर right every right is a legal right. Certain rights might be sanctioned by social customs, है ना, but legal rights का ये classification है. Yes, we can. Because MG Narega says that it says a certain kind, it guarantees only a certain kind of employment, है ना. It does not guarantee all kind of employment. It says that a person who is living in rural India, if he is willing to do physical labor, है ना, unskilled labor, physical labor, then the state is bound to provide that job to him. If that person, if the state fails to provide that job within 15 days, you are guaranteed unemployment allowance. Some allowance by the state has to come your way. And if the state fails to give you that allowance, then you can go approach your local level courts, you can go approach your high courts saying that my right has been violated, my statutory right, a right which was guaranteed through law, and through a statute has been violated. Yes, fine, fine. Yes, yes. We'll discuss that, है ना. There has to be a balance. Actually देखो, अब ये दो conflictual rights है जो हमारा constitution, या दो conflictual ideas है जो हमारे constitution put forwards. Yes, one is under DPSP. In fact, one of the core principles of DPSP is prevention of concentration of wealth. Yes, so prevention of concentration of wealth, according to the Constitution, Article 37, it is the duty of every state to implement these guidelines to ensure socio-economic justice. To ensure economic justice, matlab prevention of inequality, it is essential to prevent concentration of wealth, है ना. तो अब ये DPSP कह रहा है the state should work towards it. But the fundamental right, पहले तो fundamental right ही था, right to property. उसके बाद it is still a right mentioned under the Constitution. So what should the government do? What should be the priority? Should right to property enjoy more priority over prevention of concentration of wealth? है ना, क्योंकि अब कहना आसान है कि लिबरल प्रिंसिपल्स, सोशलिस्ट प्रिंसिपल्स, गांधीयन गाइडलाइन सब इंप्लीमेंट करना है ना. इट इज ईजियर टू से दैट वी आर अ मिक्स्ड इकोनॉमी, है ना. हमने कहा कि हम सोशलिस्ट स्टेट भी हैं और हमारा फंडामेंटल वैल्यू लिबर्टी भी है. हम सोशलिस्ट स्टेट मतलब हम वेलफेयर स्टेट बनना चाहते हैं, लेकिन हमारा कोर वैल्यू ऑफ द इंडियन स्टेट इज लिबर्टी. वी वांट टू गिव लिबर्टी टू ऑल इंडिविजुअल्स. तो लिबर्टी का मतलब है राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी. ऑल शुड बी एट लिबर्टी टू possess as much wealth, earn as much income as we want to. But also the DPSP says that we want to establish a welfare state. तो एक बैलेंस स्ट्राइक करना पड़ेगा इस दोनों आइडियाज के बीच में. एंड दिस हैज बीन अ मैटर ऑफ डिबेट इवन अंडर द सुप्रीम कोर्ट. सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड द लेजिस्लेचर और सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड द एग्जीक्यूटिव डिबेटेड for enough 3-4 decades since India's independence. This was the debate which should enjoy precedence. Should fundamental right, should right given directly under the constitution, or should the DPSPs, which are expected to be the fundamental values guiding the governance of the country, should enjoy priority. Yes, so that was the debate that went on, and that we'll discuss. तो इंडियन स्टेट ट्राइज टू स्ट्राइक अ बैलेंस बिटवीन द टू. ठीक है, तो इंडियन स्टेट ट्राइज टू स्ट्राइक अ बैलेंस. तो वही है ना कि वी आर लिबर्टी इज द कोर वैल्यू. यू एंड आई आर फ्री टू अर्न एज मच एज वी विश टू, as much as is our caliber, as much the kind of job that we are able to secure. But then there is also progressive taxation. More you earn, more tax you pay. Progressive taxation क्या है? It is an aim, it is an instrument to prevent concentration of wealth, to ensure reduction of income inequality. Yes, so liberty भी है और दूसरी तरफ progressive taxation भी है. So that is the idea. So it has been a matter of debate and we seek to strike a balance between the two. क्योंकि दोनों important है ना. यही हमने पढ़ा था, liberty, equality and fraternity form a trinity. यूनियन है वो एक, है ना. यू कैनॉट वन फ्रॉम द अदर, यू कैनॉट सेपरेट वन फ्रॉम द अदर. फाइन, दैट इज द आइडिया. फाइन. नेक्स्ट, व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन फंडामेंटल राइट्स वर्सेस DPSP? Yes, one of the online student has asked this question, so let us list this down. What are the differences between fundamental rights and DPSP? You will tell me. नहीं, एक एक करके बोलो, ऐसे कुछ नहीं समझ में आएगा. Yes. ठीक है, एक एनफोर्सिबिलिटी है, एक नॉन एनफोर्सिएबल है. फिर और बताओ. ठीक है, we'll start from there. It is mentioned under, please write down along with me, part 3 of the Constitution, mentioned under part 4 of the Constitution. Yes. Second, it is legally enforceable and justiciable. This is legally non-enforceable and non-justiciable. What else? Yes, aim is to promote political democracy. DPSP का क्या aim है? Yes, aim is to establish socio-economic democracy. To establish socio-economic democracy. What else? Not a देखो हम एग्जॉस्टिवली नहीं कह सकते कि है ना फंडामेंटल राइट इज ओनली प्रमोटिंग पॉलिटिकल डेमोक्रेसी. इनफैक्ट यूनिवर्सल एडल्ट फ्रेंचाइज इज नॉट अ फंडामेंटल right for that matter, but generally speaking it seeks to promote the concept of liberty. And in fact what kind of a liberty? The concept is, बाद में हम ये सब पढ़ते हैं है ना, आई डोंट वांट टू गेट इनटू डिटेल्स ऑफ इट, बट हम ओवरऑल यही कह सकते हैं कि है ना फंडामेंटल राइट इज बेसिकली टू प्रमोट लिबर्टी एंड ये जो है डीपीएसपी इज टू प्रमोट सोशियो इकोनॉमिक जस्टिस. तो इसको हम ब्रॉडली है ना ये एक्चुअली सिनोनिम्स की तरह यूज करते हैं. तो वी से फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर मेंट फॉर प्रमोशन ऑफ पॉलिटिकल डेमोक्रेसी, yes, and DPSP are meant for promotion of socio-economic democracy. Many more fundamental rights, not just 10 fundamental rights, and starting from Article 14 till Article 32 are a list of fundamental rights. Article 19 itself mentions 6 fundamental rights. Not necessary. Right to equality. Right to equality before law, equal protection of law, right against discrimination, right to public employment, और all examples of promotion of liberty. है ना, social aspect पे ज़्यादा focus ये नहीं है. इसका focus क्या है? It puts negative obligations on state. इसका primary ये है. देखो अब ये ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ यही करना है ना. अब इसमें है that the state should not discriminate when it comes to public employment. लेकिन there is one provision which talks about reservation as well under Article 16 of the Indian Constitution, which mentions fundamental rights. But generally speaking, and broadly speaking, the primary objective of Article 16 of the Indian Constitution is to promote discrimination in public employment. Nobody should be discriminated from seeking public employment based on your race, religion, color, caste, place of birth, है ना. इस तरह से कोई भी discriminatory ground नहीं होना चाहिए. So basically fundamental rights, यही तो idea था, इसीलिए तो constitution makers ने divide किया. Yes, because it tells the state not to discriminate. It is not asking the state to do something more. It is asking the state to not do certain things. Even with respect to right to religion, yes, it is asking the state not to discriminate on the basis of religion. It is asking the state to give individual a right to practice, profess, है ना, right to conscience, है ना. तो we can, the state will not tell us, unlike a communist state. For example, China says that all people should be atheist. Atheist मतलब they should not believe in God. ठीक है, लेकिन इंडियन स्टेट डज नॉट. इट इज माई चॉइस. आई कैन बी एन अथीस्ट, आई कैन बी एन आर्डेंट है ना रिलीजियस पर्सन. आई कैन से नो, आई एम नॉट रिलीजियस बट आई एम स्पिरिचुअल, and I can choose whatever religion I want to practice. There is no constitutional obligation on me to prefer this or that religion. So basically these set of rights are telling state not to do something, not to discriminate. Yes, so these are negative obligations. So negative obligation, not to do something, not to discriminate, इसका मतलब क्या है? It seeks to promote liberty, give right to the citizens to make choices. Do they want to seek public employment? Do they do not want to seek public employment? है ना, do not discriminate, do not practice untouchability, do not give titles, है ना, do not create social hierarchy. Yes, so it is, and इसके थ्रू क्या कर रहा है? लिबर्टी एस्टैब्लिश कर रहा है. और लिबर्टी जब एस्टैब्लिश करता है तो उसको हम एक्सटेंड करते हुए कहते हैं इट सीक्स टू एस्टैब्लिश पॉलिटिकल डेमोक्रेसी. डेमोक्रेसी का आइडिया मतलब क्या है? डेमोक्रेसी सिंपली मीन्स इक्वालिटी ऑफ ऑल. One person, one vote. Everybody is equal, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your sex, irrespective of your place of birth, irrespective of your race, religion, caste, creed. We are all equal. Yes. In fact, there has been a very beautiful study conducted in case of India, which says India as a country witnesses high voter turnout every election we will have minimum 60-65%, at times 70% voter turnout होता है हमारे elections में. But go to the developed world, they do not have sufficient voter turnout. 20, 30, 40% is the maximum voter turnout. So much so that certain developed countries have been forced to make a law saying that all citizens should go and vote. It is a compulsion imposed by law that everybody should go and vote. लेकिन यहाँ पे क्या है? Right to vote है. हम चाहे तो vote करो, नहीं चाहो तो मत करो. Yes, but still then, so many of us turn out at the polling booth year on year. और इंडिया में कितने elections होते हैं? But still कोई voters fatigue नहीं है यहाँ पे. We are very happy to go and cast our vote. Now what is the reason? They were thinking, what is the reason? क्या है? The political scientists were baffled कि ऐसा क्यों है इंडिया में इतने elections होते हैं, but still then, because generally there is a discussion on voter fatigue कि बार बार elections होंगे तो voters they get tired of voting, they might not turn out to vote. Yes, it becomes a chore, but in case of India that is not the case. So many elections but voter turnout is so good. Developed country जहाँ पे democracy है ना फंडामेंटली स्ट्रांग होनी चाहिए, वहां पे वोटर टर्नआउट ही नहीं है. ऐसा क्यों है? इट्स अ फेस्टिवल. व्हाई इज इट अ फेस्टिवल? सो दे आर ऑल्सो इलेक्टिंग देयर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव. ऐसा थोड़ी ना कि हम ही इलेक्ट करते हैं अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को. डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज भी तो इलेक्ट कर रही हैं अपनी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स को. बिकॉज इन केस ऑफ इंडिया इट इज अ फेस्टिवल. व्हाई? बिकॉज इक्वालिटी है यहाँ पे. Are you rich? Are you poor? It does not matter. All of our vote stands for the same thing, irrespective of the gender. So, when people go to vote, when they are standing on the polling booth line, they feel a sense of equality. Social life में चाहे कितना भी discrimination हो, कितना भी subjugation हो, but in political life, they get a sense of equality that yes, I am as equal. My vote is as relevant as yours. My opinion is equally sought after and equally important. Yes, that is the reason you find that, in fact, it is economically weaker classes which turn out more to vote. Yes. So that is the idea, है ना? तो political scientists concluded that it is maybe because of this reason. There is a psychological factor behind why we have such great voter turnouts in India. Yes, so यही है. तो इसी को, क्योंकि liberty है ना, liberty is so important, इसी को हम आगे चल के ये बोलते हैं political democracy. ठीक है. और DPSP का मतलब क्या है? सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी, सोशो इकोनॉमिक वेलफेयर, सोशो इकोनॉमिक जस्टिस. अब कुछ भी बोलो, ये सबका मतलब एक ही है. ठीक है. सो दैट इज द आइडिया. सोशो इकोनॉमिक इनइक्वालिटी कम करने की कोशिश. फाइन. सो डीपीएसपी सीक्स टू डू दैट. हैव यू रिटन? इट एम्स इज टू प्रमोट पॉलिटिकल डेमोक्रेसी, सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी. इसी में लिखो फंडामेंटल राइट्स में. इट पुट्स नेगेटिव ऑब्लिगेशन ऑन द स्टेट. इट पुट्स नेगेटिव ऑब्लिगेशन ऑन द स्टेट. Obligation, negative obligation on the state, and under DPSP it puts positive obligation on the state. It puts positive obligation on the state. एक और पॉइंट लिखो. फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर मोर कंसर्न्ड, दे आर मोर कंसर्न्ड about individual well-being. More concerned about individual well-being. Individual rights ज़्यादा guarantee करता है. And DPSP more about social well-being. Promotion of international peace, prevent butchering of animals, uniform civil code. Yes, prevent concentration of wealth. So it is about social well-being, more about social well-being. Yes. हाँ लिमिटेड है ये बोलना सही नहीं होगा, है ना, बट व्हाट ही सेइंग कि यस इट इज गाइडिंग, है ना, कुछ मॉरल वैल्यूज, कुछ गाइडलाइंस दे रहे हैं थ्रू डीपीएसपी so as to formulate laws in the future. That is correct, but we will not say that fundamental rights are limited. Yes, in fact, Article 21 has been so broadly interpreted by the Supreme Court. All rights that you can think of can be included under, है ना, right to life. Yes, second point is correct. Yes, in fact, it is said that there was no need for so many broad listing of fundamental rights mentioned under the Constitution, even if the right to life is liberally interpreted. In that case, majority of the points mentioned, right against discrimination is part 2, right to life. You will have a fruitful life when there is no discrimination by the state, no discrimination by the society. Yes, abolition of untouchability can be covered under right to life. Yes, right to public employment can be covered under right to life. So majority of these rights, right against arbitrary arrest, arbitrary detention, can be covered under right to life. So if there was no need for listing down such a broad or list of fundamental rights, fundamental right to life could itself be liberally interpreted to encompass most of these. Right to freedom of religion, सब कुछ आ जाएगा right to life में. Yes, so that is the idea. हाँ, वो आप मेंशन कर सकते हो that the concept of fundamental rights has been borrowed from the US Constitution and this from Irish Constitution. Yes. Yes, if you want, you can mention that fundamental rights borrowed from the idea of fundamental rights borrowed from US Constitution. DPSPs, on the other hand, borrowed from Irish Constitution. DPSP from Irish Constitution. Fine. अच्छा, fundamental rights and legal rights, I have just explained it कि fundamental right is a subset of legal rights. So if we were there's a question, is there any difference between them, what to say, you know, with respect to this? So we'll say all fundamental rights are legal rights, but all legal rights are not necessarily fundamental rights. So that is the idea. Fine. Next, give the heading as conflict between fundamental rights and DPSPs. Fundamental rights and DPSPs. Yes. Now there has been a long-term debate between fundamental rights and DPSPs. Fine. So you find that, in fact, once India got independent, once the constitution entered into force, in 1950 the constitution enters into force, and in 1951 marks the beginning of this debate between fundamental rights and DPSP. And this conflict between the two played out into the Indian politics for quite a bit. As I told you, independent India, one of the first actions of the government of independent India was to abolish zamindari rights, yes, zamindari provisions, yes, and this was justified on the ground that DPSP tells us to prevent tells the government to prevent concentration of wealth. Yes. However, few approached the Supreme Court saying that right to property is in fact a fundamental right. So in fact it is legally enforceable and justiciable. Yes. So they reached to the Supreme Court saying that, or the High Court, that saying that these rights are fundamental rights and the government is violating the fundamental rights, so the Supreme Court should intervene. And Supreme Court early on in these cases, है ना, कुछ important cases थे इस समय, चंपाकम, दुराई राजन, ये सब आप बाद में ये सब नाम पढ़ोगे, अभी we are not going to list it down, but just for your information, there was this very important case, चंपाकम दुराई राजन केस, फिर एक गोलखनाथ केस आया. इन सारे केसेस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि फंडामेंटल राइट्स विल एंजॉय प्रेसिडेंस over DPSP. The reason given by the Supreme Court that fundamental rights are justiciable. They have been made justiciable under the Constitution and therefore they are sacrosanct. And their position is much above anything else. Fundamental rights बहुत important है because they ensure limited government. They put limits on the actions of the government, and these rights are fundamental to the development of individual personality. Yes, so they are sacrosanct. Government cannot do anything which violates fundamental rights. Therefore, they will enjoy. In case there is a law to implement DPSP and it does not violate fundamental right, no problem. But if it violates fundamental right, then there is a problem. The law will be declared unconstitutional. Yes, because fundamental right cannot be violated. They are sacrosanct in nature. However, later on, so the Indian Parliament had zamindari lekar aaye, nationalization of banks lekar aaye, and ye sare legislations were regularly challenged in the Supreme Court. Now it created problem for the government. Eventually the government brought in a constitutional amendment which said that they would try and strike a balance between fundamental right and DPSP. How this balance? They said that certain DPSP, if they were to be implemented, if they were to be enforced, in that case, and if it violates only certain fundamental rights, they will not be considered unconstitutional. So the government said that let me strike a balance between the two. And this balance was in fact accepted by the Supreme Court, and eventually Supreme Court, as a matter of this debate, this debate later on turned into a debate over right of the government to amend the Constitution. Eventually this debate on DPSP versus fundamental rights है ना, ये चलता रहा. 2 केसेस आ गए, 2 मेजर केसेस आए. उसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि फंडामेंटल राइट्स विल एंजॉय प्रेसिडेंस ओवर DPSP. Now the government brought in a constitutional amendment, और वो constitutional amendment ने एक balance strike करने की कोशिश करी between DPSP and fundamental rights. तो इवेंचुअली ये डिबेट बन गया कि हाउ मच पावर डज द गवर्नमेंट हैव टू अमेंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. कहाँ पे द गवर्नमेंट विल नॉट बी एबल टू अमेंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. यस, एंड इट इज एंड दिस डिबेट डेवलप्ड एंड इवेंचुअली अ जजमेंट केम इन केशवानंदा भारती केस 1973, in which the Supreme Court gave the doctrine of basic structure of the Constitution. So the Supreme Court said the government can amend the Constitution subject to the fact that it does not amend the basic structure of the Constitution. Now what is this basic structure? These are core structure, core values represented by the Constitution. Now who is going to identify the core structure and core values? The Supreme Court itself. Yes. So Supreme Court has not exhaustively. So on case to case basis, they elaborate what is the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. For example, the Supreme Court has said India as a democracy, India as a secular republic. Yes, है ना, the balance between fundamental rights and DPSP are all examples of this basic structure of the Constitution. Yes, fine. So the this debate, this conflict between fundamental rights and DPSP eventually give us the idea of the basic structure of the Constitution, and presently the conflict is settled. Okay, Supreme Court and the government has accepted to settle this conflict on the basis of this fine balance that was brought about through 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. इनके डिटेल में अभी हम नहीं जाएंगे, आप फाउंडेशन कोर्स में ये सब डिटेल में पढ़ोगे. ठीक है, कि व्हाट इज द एग्जैक्ट बैलेंस. I can just tell you that to implement two provisions of DPSP, two fundamental rights can be violated. है ना, कुछ स्पेसिफिक प्रोविजंस आइडेंटिफाई किए गए हैं, जैसे कि प्रिवेंशन ऑफ कंसंट्रेशन ऑफ वेल्थ, है ना, और उस केस में अगर कुछ फंडामेंटल राइट्स सच एज राइट टू, उस समय वो है ना, इट वाज अ फंडामेंटल राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इज वायलेटेड, इट इज फाइन. सो a law to implement a particular DPSP such as prevention of concentration of wealth will not be called unconstitutional only on the ground if it violates right to property. Yes, so a balance has been sought to be stuck between DPSP and fundamental rights, and this balance has been identified, has been accepted by the Supreme Court as basic structure of the Constitution. So today we believe that yes, fundamental rights are sacrosanct, but DPSPs are also equally important because they are fundamental to the governance of the country. They seek to establish socio-economic democracy. The political democracy is established by fundamental rights, but it cannot be enjoyed in its truest sense until and unless there is socio-economic democracy, there is freedom from hunger and poverty. है ना, political democracy का क्या मतलब है? या राइट टू वोट का क्या मतलब है? राइट अगेंस्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, राइट टू पब्लिक एम्प्लॉयमेंट का क्या मतलब है? इफ यू आर हंग्री एंड यू आर व्हेन डीलिंग विथ स्टार्क पॉवर्टी, it carries no meaning. So for us to enjoy actually our fundamental rights, right to freedom of religion का क्या मतलब है? If you are dying out of hunger, yes, right to profess, practice, propagate, इनका कोई मतलब नहीं है ना, until and unless. Right to preserve our cultural heritage, our script and our language carries no meaning if you are dying out of hunger. Yes, so for us to in fact enjoy the fundamental rights, it is essential that DPSPs are implemented. That to enjoy political democracy, it is essential that socio-economic democracy is implemented. Fine, so that is the idea which has now been accepted, and it is identified as the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Fine, let's write it down. Yes, conflict between fundamental rights and DPSPs. Under it, write down, at times, when the government intends to implement DPSP, comma, it can come in conflict with fundamental rights of the citizens. Of the citizens, full stop. For example, this problem arose this problem arose when the government sought to pass laws to abolish the zamindari system. Full stop. These laws were opposed that they violated right to property. These laws were opposed on the ground that they violated right to property. Next point लिखो इसी में. However, the government argued that societal needs are greater than individual needs. Semicolon. That societal welfare is more important than individual rights. Next point लिखो. On the other hand, the judiciary held the view that fundamental rights have been made justiciable under the Constitution. And therefore are sacrosanct. That is, full stop, that is, comma, they cannot be limited. है ना? Fundamental rights cannot be limited even for the purpose of implementing DPSPs. Purpose of implementing DPSPs. Next point. This debate over fundamental rights and DPSP led to another debate. Put a hyphen. Regarding the power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution. to amend the constitution. Amend the constitution. है ना, ये अंडरलाइन कर सकते हो, रिगार्डिंग पावर ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट टू अमेंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. अब इसी में लिखो नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. द पार्लियामेंट हेल्ड द व्यू, द पार्लियामेंट हेल्ड द व्यू that it can amend, that it can amend any part of the constitution, any part of the constitution, है ना, with required majority they can amend any part of the constitution. Full stop. Next point. The Supreme Court in this context gave the doctrine of basic structure, underline doctrine of basic structure in single inverted commas, gave the doctrine of basic structure in Keshwananda Bharti case. Full stop. है ना, केशवानंद भारती case also underline and basic doctrine of basic structure also you underline. इसी में लिखो. As next point also you can write down. It means that the parliament cannot amend certain basic features या fundamental features, certain fundamental features of the constitution, Write down. The Supreme Court has identified that democracy, comma, republic, comma, secular nature of Indian state, and a balance between fundamental rights and DPSP represent the basic structure of the constitution, Yes. So this balance cannot be distorted. Fine, we are not elaborating what is the exact balance that is constitutionally accepted by constitution में है ना, the parliament had brought in a constitutional amendment to elucidate on the balance between fundamental right and DPSP, जो कि Supreme Court ने भी endorse किया है. So we are not elaborating on that because not within the scope of this class, but there is a clear-cut balance which has been clarified by the Supreme Court and by the Parliament, which has now been identified as the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, and it cannot be amended. Fine. So we seek to strike a balance between DPSP and fundamental right, we accept that both are equally important. Political democracy guaranteed by, you can write down, has been accepted as the basic structure, है ना, आपने ये लिखा है, basic structure of the constitution. Write down. हाँ, next point लिखो. Presently it is accepted. Presently it is accepted that fundamental rights which guarantee political democracy cannot be truly enjoyed, which guarantees political democracy cannot be truly enjoyed without socio-economic equality. Socio-economic equality guaranteed through equality, guaranteed through, yeah, sought to be guaranteed through DPSP. Yes. Full stop. There is no meaning of fundamental rights without the right to freedom from hunger and want. Freedom from hunger and want. Yes, from hunger and want. So why hunger and poverty? Fine. So that is the idea. This is the balance that we have accepted. Fine. The last head that we'll discuss under DPSP is utility of DPSP. What is the utility of DPSP? Yeah, importance of DPSP. Yes. क्या है importance of DPSP? You tell me. We'll write it down accordingly. हाँ, seeks to establish welfare state. उसके अलावा बताओ, पहले कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्या बोलता है वो लिखेंगे, उसके बाद वेलफेयर स्टेट लिख लेंगे. व्हाट डज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से? हाँ, guidelines for the government, they are going to be fundamental to governance of the country. Write down point number 1. they are to act as guidelines for the policy makers. Guidelines for the policy makers. Full stop. The constitution says that they are fundamental to the governance of the country. They are fundamental to governance of the country. They are guiding principles. They are fundamental to the governance of the country. Yes, fundamental to the governance of the country. Full stop. Next point क्या है? It seeks to establish welfare state. It seeks to establish welfare state. Seeks to establish welfare state. Welfare state को अलग तरीका क्या कहने का? सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी. सेमीकोलोन सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी. सीक्स टू एस्टैब्लिश सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी. यस, इसी में लिखो पुट अ हाइफन, विदाउट विच Political democracy, guaranteed under, without which political democracy guaranteed under, part 3, cannot be truly enjoyed, फिर क्या, what else? It insists Guardian Gandhian principles. ठीक है, और बताओ, वेलफेयर स्टेट में कवर हो गया अभी, है ना? इट प्लेसेस मॉरल ऑब्लिगेशन, फाइन, है ना, गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल्स में आ गया वो. क्रूशियल रोल इन इलेक्शन आप ऐसे लिखोगे, लिटमस टेस्ट फॉर द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, है ना, लिखो, क्योंकि डायरेक्ट क्रूशियल रोल इलेक्शन में क्या है, दे आर अ लिटमस टेस्ट, दे आर अ टेस्ट कि हैज द गवर्नमेंट परफॉर्म्ड और नॉट. If the government has enforced DPSP, has brought in laws to implement DPSP, that means they are in line with the constitution, their performance is up to the mark. Yes, write down. क्या है, थर्ड पॉइंट लिखो, they serve as litmus test. लिटमस पेपर्स केमिस्ट्री में पढ़ा होगा आप लोगों ने. यस, सो these are, है ना, these words are like political commentators have used these words, तो हम उन्हीं से बोरो करके लिख रहे हैं. yes, it serves as litmus test for the government of a country, for the government of the country. yes, और लास्ट पॉइंट लिखो, they help in deciding constitutional validity of the law. Yes, so by this balance that has been elaborated, yes, so if the law is implementing the balance, even if it is in violation of fundamental rights per se, then we say the law is legally valid. Fine, so that is the idea. It helps in identifying constitutional validity of a law. Fine. Fine, so these are some of the purposes served by DPSP. And these are the importance या utility of DPSP. Fine, with it we conclude our discussion on DPSP as such. अकाउंटेबल तो नहीं बना रहा है, कोई तरह का लीगल ऑब्लिगेशन नहीं प्लेस कर रहा है गवर्नमेंट पे. इट इज जस्ट सजेस्टिंग, देखो इसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का फोर्स इज पीपल्स ओपिनियन, पब्लिक ओपिनियन, कि आप इलेक्शन में जाओगे, आप री इलेक्ट नहीं होगे until and unless you implement a DPSP. तो it is not making the government accountable as such. Legal accountability कुछ नहीं है. That is a unique provision of the Indian Constitution, है ना. तो ये अभी ये हमने ऑलरेडी मेंशन कर दिया है कि the societal objectives, है ना, या हमने इसको लिबरल प्रिंसिपल्स में भी मेंशन किया है. तो ठीक है ना. जनरली डीपीएसपी का क्या यूटिलिटी है ना. इट डज नॉट बाइंड द गवर्नमेंट टू फॉलो लीगल ऑब्लिगेशंस, इंटरनेशनल लीगल ऑब्लिगेशंस एज सच, लेकिन कोई भी समझदार स्टेट, अ रैशनल स्टेट विल फॉलो इट्स लीगल कमिटमेंट्स, बिकॉज अदरवाइज नोबडी वुड बिलीव यू इन द फ्यूचर. If you go on violating your legal commitments in future, other countries are not going to believe you. So that is what it is. Constitutional validity. We have last point we have mentioned. It helps us to establish constitutional validity of the law. It means, is the law legally valid, constitutionally valid or not, can be known. by studying a DPSP. Yes, because the Supreme Court and the Parliament now has accepted to strike a fine balance between DPSP and fundamental rights. So if a law is made by the Parliament to implement a particular DPSP, and even in the process, even if it violates certain fundamental rights, it will be considered legally enforceable. बट इफ इट वायलेट्स, है ना, तो वही आइडिया है. तो लीगल वैलिडिटी एक्चुअली देखो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ना एक एक डॉक्ट्रिन भी दे रखी है. फॉर एग्जांपल द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ हार्मोनियस इंटरप्रिटेशन, है ना, इस तरह का एक डॉक्ट्रिन दे रखा है जिसमें उन्होंने बताया है कि इफ अ लॉ हैज बीन एनेक्टेड टू इम्प्लीमेंट अ पर्टिकुलर DPSP and it can be interpreted in a way that it does not violate a particular fundamental right. क्योंकि इंटरप्रिटेशंस वेरी कर सकते हो आप, है ना, कई बार आप इस तरह से भी इंटरप्रेट कर सकते हो चीजों को कि ऐसे डज नॉट वायलेट द फंडामेंटल राइट. इन दैट केस द लॉ वुड बी लीगली वैलिड. एंड जो ये बैलेंस इन्होंने बताया है, तो द बैलेंस दैट actually has been accepted by the Parliament as well as by the Supreme Court is that in case a law is enacted by the Parliament to implement Article 39B and 39C and in the process it violates Article 14 and 19 of the Constitution, in that case the law is legally valid. इसका मतलब क्या है? ये दोनों क्या है? ये DPSPs हैं. एक है प्रिवेंशन ऑफ कंसंट्रेशन ऑफ वेल्थ, एक है इक्विटेबल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वेल्थ. ठीक है, तो बेसिकली एक जैसा आइडिया है. एंड आर्टिकल 14 राइट टू इक्वालिटी एंड आर्टिकल 19 द 6 फ्रीडम्स, है ना, इट लिस्ट्स डाउन. तो अगर कोई लॉ है जो वायलेट करता है टू इम्प्लीमेंट दीज टू बट इट वायलेट्स दीज टू ओनली, इन दैट केस द लॉ इज गोइंग टू बी लीगली वैलिड. यस, इनफैक्ट राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इसी में था पहले, अंडर आर्टिकल 19 में ही था. ठीक है, तो दैट इज द आइडिया. सो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैलिडिटी आपको अगर पता करना है किसी लॉ का, तो वी लुक एट दीज प्रोविजंस, है ना, वी लुक एट DPSP. यस, सो इवन इफ इट सपोजिटली देयर वाज अ लॉ which was just violating Article 14 or 19, we would say it is invalid, it violates the fundamental rights. But if it is implementing Article 39B and 39C, in that case we say that the law is legally valid. तो constitutional validity of the law को समझने के लिए भी DPSP important है. Fine, that is the idea. Fine, fine, I hope it is clear. I think so there's a lot of confusion with respect to fundamental rights and legal rights. Yes. Yes, ma'am, there was a question in the test which asked how legal rights are different from fundamental rights. Did they mean statutory rights by legal rights? देखो, अगर क्वेश्चन था एग्जाम में जो पूछ रहा था आपसे, they must have asked in the test how is legal right different from fundamental right. In that question you have to write the answer. You have to talk about uniqueness of fundamental right, क्योंकि legal ऑल लीगल राइट्स आर नॉट फंडामेंटल राइट्स, है ना, और भी राइट्स है लीगल राइट्स में. तो इसमें लेट मी कम. यस, तो इफ अ क्वेश्चन वाज आस्क्ड हाउ इज फंडामेंटल राइट्स डिफरेंट फ्रॉम रेस्ट ऑफ द लीगल राइट्स, ठीक है, इसका मतलब यही है. तो इसका मतलब ये एंड इससे कैसे डिफरेंट है फंडामेंटल राइट. Only in case of violation of fundamental rights, only in case of violation of fundamental rights can an individual approach the Supreme Court. This is the answer. In a case of violation of rest of the legal rights, we do not have the right to approach the Supreme Court directly. It is a privilege which is present only in case of fundamental rights. यही है डिफरेंस बिटवीन देम, यही है, और कोई डिफरेंस नहीं है. फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर लीगल राइट्स. लेकिन अगर एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन आएगा डिफरेंस बिटवीन लीगल राइट्स एंड फंडामेंटल राइट्स, यू विल मेंशन फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर मेंशन्ड अंडर पार्ट 3 ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. लीगल राइट्स आर राइट्स व्हिच आर गारंटीड through legislation, or they can also be the extra, yeah, they can also be the other rights guaranteed under the Indian Constitution but not fundamental rights. तो यही difference है. If fundamental rights are subset of legal rights, then there is no difference between them. No, it is not true, है ना? I hope you understand, है ना? Fundamental rights, how are they different from the other rights? Fundamental rights, the first they are guaranteed under Part 3. बाकी जो legal rights है, चाहे वो ये हो, चाहे वो ये हो, they are not mentioned under Part 3. Second, they, in case of their violation, we can approach the Supreme Court directly, and this right is not available in case of violation of this or this. Yes, so that is the difference. Khushi says if DPSP is not enforceable by the court, then what's the purpose of DPSP? अभी तो ऐसा हो गया पूरा रामायण पढ़ लिया, पूछ रहे राम कौन है? Yes, what is the purpose of DPSP? They are supposed to guide the government, है ना? सोशो इकोनॉमिक डेमोक्रेसी लाना है, लेकिन DPSP को enforceable नहीं कर सकते थे because they are positive obligations. They are asking the state to do something. A newly independent state with lack of resources could not have been burdened with extra obligations. So the constitution makers chose to give the lawmakers freedom of time, freedom of a choice when they think they are ready to implement the DPSPs. Yes. Dora, Dada, I hope now these points are clear. Differentiate in points, ma'am, between fundamental rights and legal rights. 2 points मैंने बता दिए. Fundamental rights mentioned under Part 3, and in case of their violation, you can directly approach the Supreme Court. Yes. Yes. Yes, सिद्धि, देवाशीष, प्रियांशी, ये सब है ना जो आप मेंशन कर रहे हो, the differences between DPSP and fundamental rights is fine. प्रियांशी says what is negative obligation? Negative obligation मतलब कुछ मत करो, ये बता रहे हैं, है ना? That is the negative obligation, asking the state not to act in a certain way. That is negative obligation. Fine. Government schemes come under DPSP. See, to implement DPSP, they can make certain government schemes. MG Narega is a scheme also for that matter, है ना? So it is a scheme, है ना, to implement DPSP. DPSP, are they legal rights? No. Are they legal rights? No, they are not enforceable. जो enforceable नहीं है वो legal rights नहीं है. Legal rights मतलब legally enforceable. Are DPSP legally enforceable? No. So DPSP is not legal right. I hope Sahil you understand. Yes. In a question, if they ask that fundamental rights are fundamental for governance, consider the option true. देखो, it depends, but fundamental rights are negative obligations, है ना? They are something that the state should not do or should guarantee to the people. So as such, they are fundamental in governance, but fundamental for governance abhi fine. Fine. Fine, that is it then with respect to DPSP. Next topic we'll start is election and representation. But before that, let us take a 5 minutes break and then we'll continue. Fine, a 5 minutes break is fine. Election and representation. ठीक है, चलो 5 minutes break and then we continue. Fine, starting once again.
Yes, there is a question by Karan. He says, ma'am, what is the difference between state, nation, state nation and nation state? देखो हम इसमें तो गए नहीं है ना, तो ये क्वेश्चन वैसे तो आउट ऑफ क्लास सिलेबस है अभी फिलहाल, टेस्ट में पूछा है उन्होंने। चलो ठीक है, फिर आई विल डील विद इट। ठीक है, नाउ व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन नेशन वर्सेस नेशन स्टेट versus state nation? Yes. Yes. Yes, now what is the difference? What do you mean by nation first of all? या nation state आपको पता है, you are familiar with which term more? ठीक है, चलो फिर नेशन से शुरू करते हैं। व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय नेशन? नेशन मतलब क्या होता है? देखो कंट्री अलग चीज है, अभी कंट्री नहीं बोलो, अभी एक बार हम तो ओवरलैपिंगली नेशन को भी कंट्री बोलते हैं, नेशन स्टेट को भी कंट्री बोलते हैं, स्टेट नेशन को भी कंट्री बोलते हैं, ठीक है। लेकिन अब हम इसका इंडिविजुअल क्लियर कट मीनिंग समझेंगे, ठीक है। सो व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय नेशन? नहीं, टेरिटरी नहीं है पहले तो, है ना, टेरिटरी नहीं है। Nation means an it refers to an ethno-linguistic homogeneous population which shares a sense of belonging. नेशन का मतलब ये होता है, ठीक है। नेशन रेफर्स टू, पहले समझ लो फिर लिखना, ठीक है। नेशन रेफर्स टू एथनो लिंग्विस्टिक, एथनो मतलब क्या? एथनिसिटी, एथनिसिटी ठीक है। एथनिसिटी, एथनिसिटी का मतलब क्या होता है? रेस, है ना, कॉमन लेमैन टर्म है रेस। तो अ पर्सन which belongs to the same race, ethnicity and linguistic, linguistic मतलब language, so an ethno-linguistic homogeneous, homogeneous मतलब क्या? same population, population मतलब क्या होता है? group of people, ठीक है। तो एक इंसान के बारे में बात नहीं हो रही, it is group of people, a group of people who share same language and race, who belong to the same language and race, a group of people who belong to the same language and race, and they share a sense of belonging. Yes, this is a nation. So generally in case of India we can say there might be few Marathis in the class. Yes. So you find that generally speaking Marathis will tend to sit with other Marathis. Yes, Gujaratis with other Gujaratis, Biharis with other Biharis, Jharkhandis with other Jharkhandis. Yes. Why? Because they feel a sense of belonging. And it is easier to communicate. You have same festivals, same cultural values that we have grown in. So you have a sense of belonging. Yes. So this is a nation. So Gujarati nation India में है, Marathi nation कह सकते हैं, है ना. You have a Punjabi nation, you have Haryanvi nation. Yes, you have the Konkani nation. Yes, so basically when you belong to the same race and you speak the same language, you share a sense of belonging to one another, then in that case that population constitutes a nation. अभी आते हैं, अभी अमेरिका में नहीं, अभी पहले ये है ना, हाँ। तो इसका मतलब हो गया नेशन, ठीक है। नेशन, अब नेशन स्टेट क्या है? नेशन स्टेट के देयर आर 4 characteristics of a nation state. 4 characteristics of a nation state. Its nation state will comprise a defined territory. Yes, and this territory will have a population, and this population should actually be ethno-linguistically homogeneous. Yes, then they would have a government, and this government will enjoy sovereignty. So this is how we define a nation state. Yes, so nation state is a country, and a nation state comprises a defined territory, and this territory is inhabited by a ethnically and linguistically homogeneous population. Yes, and they have a government, and this government enjoys sovereignty. Yes, fine. So these are the characteristics. So example, we can talk about Italy. All people are Italian, है ना? They speak the language Italian. Linguistically, ethnically, they are generally similar. Germany, France, है ना? ये सब हैं क्या examples of nation states. Yes. So this is the है ना meaning of nation state. Nation state comprises a predefined territory which is inhabited by ethno-linguistically similar population. They have a government, and the government enjoys sovereignty. Yes, fine. In fact, the early nation states, या early countries, layman term में, early countries which were constituted were these, है ना, Italy, Germany, France. यूरोप में नेशन स्टेट का कंसेप्ट इमर्ज होता है ना, यूरोप में कंट्रीज फॉर्म होती है, और तो इसीलिए हम इनको अगर टेक्निकली डिफाइन किया जाए तो ये है नेशन स्टेट्स. नाउ इज इंडिया अ नेशन और इज इट अ नेशन स्टेट? आर वी अ फर्स्ट, पहले बताओ, आर वी अ नेशन? टेक्निकली बताओ, अब इमोशनली नहीं बोलना है अभी. Yes, we comprise many nations. Yes, India in fact comprises many nations, है ना? There is a Gujarati nation, there is a Marathi, there is a Tamil, there is a Telugu, there is an Assamese nation, there is a Konkani nation. There are many nations that make India. So we are not a nation, we are many nations. Yes, are we a nation state? We are not a nation state also, because हमारे यहाँ ठीक है, टेरिटरी है, गवर्नमेंट है, सोवरेनिटी है, लेकिन पॉपुलेशन एथनो लिंग्विस्टिकली सिमिलर है नहीं है. वी कंप्राइज मेनी नेशंस, तो हम नेशन स्टेट भी नहीं है क्योंकि पॉपुलेशन इज एक्सट्रीमली डाइवर्स इन केस ऑफ इंडिया. सो इन फैक्ट इंडिया इज अ स्टेट नेशन. State nation is a new term that we have come about with, which is used in case of multicultural societies. So these countries have territory, they have ethnically and linguistically diverse population, they have a government, and this government enjoys sovereignty. Yes, so for example, India, Brazil are examples of state nation. Yes, because we keep the diversity intact. हमारे यहाँ क्या है, the सैलड बोल मॉडल आपने सुना होगा किसी किसी ने, है ना? मतलब क्या है, इंडिया रेस्पेक्ट्स डाइवर्सिटी. हम नहीं कहते कि एवरीबडी शुड बिकम द सेम. यस, देयर इज प्लूरलिज्म, रेस्पेक्ट फॉर डाइवर्सिटी. इन केस ऑफ इंडिया, ईच नेशन, ईच पॉपुलेशन with a unique cultural, with a unique ethnic, linguistic identity can continue to preserve their identity. Yes, so that is the idea. We are a state nation, we comprise of a multicultural society. Yes, तो यही है nation. मतलब it refers to a group of people who are ethno-linguistically similar and who have a sense of belonging. This sense of belonging is very important. Yes, only then you are a nation. Then nation state, when this population है ना, lives in a particularly predefined territory, has an elected government or a government, है ना, monarchy भी हो सकती, they have a government and this government enjoys sovereignty. And state nation is similar to nation state except that it exists, or this is a term we use for multicultural societies. Fine, so that is the idea. Fine. तो यही है डिफरेंस बिटवीन नेशन, नेशन स्टेट एंड स्टेट नेशन. अगर क्वेश्चन था व्हाट इज स्टेट, तो स्टेट को हम लीगल पॉलिटिकल एंटिटी, एक्चुअली यही है तीन मेजर हेड्स. तो स्टेट को आप कह सकते हो व्हाट इज अ स्टेट, स्टेट इज द लीगल, है ना, इट इज कंट्री कहने को, है ना, विद अ प्री डिफाइंड बॉर्डर, देयर इज अ गवर्नमेंट, गवर्नमेंट एंजॉयज सॉवरेनिटी एंड पीपल लिविंग इन इट. तो जो डिफरेंस होता है यही होता है, नेशन, स्टेट नेशन एंड नेशन स्टेट. और एक और आइडिया है सिविलाइजेशनल स्टेट. सिविलाइजेशनल स्टेट क्या है? A state which is not merely representative of a geographical territory or not representative, है ना, of just a group of people living in that territory, but representative of a civilization. So India and China are also examples of civilizational state. India is a state nation, India is also a civilizational state, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ हमारा सिविलाइजेशनल वैल्यूज है ना, इंदस वैली सिविलाइजेशन, द इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन, है ना, हैज कंटिन्यूड, है ना, वी रिप्रेजेंट, वी कंटिन्यू टू बिलीव इन दोज सिविलाइजेशनल वैल्यूज दैट वी हैव शेयर्ड ओवर सेंचुरीज, है ना, ओवर मिलेनियम्स. एक कंटिन्यूअस वैल्यू सिस्टम है जो इंडियंस शेयर करते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, our respect, generally speaking, our respect for diversity. We are a land of immigrants. Yes, we believe in Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. Yes, we believe in Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. Let there be peace and prosperity around the world. Yes, so Western countries का idea that the world is a village नया है उनके लिए, लेकिन इंडिया तो हमेशा से यही बिलीव करती थी कि the entire world is one family. तो फैमिली में सबकी बेहतरी में सबकी बेहतरी है ना. So in everybody's interest lies my interest. That is the idea. Yes, welfare of all is the, है ना, these are core values that we subscribe to. Fine. So you can write down nation क्या है? An ethno-linguistically homogeneous population. It is an ethno-linguistically homogeneous population which shares a sense of belonging. There is a sense of belonging. वो बहुत important है. Yes. Then is nation state. Nation states. 4 characteristics of nation states. Yes, 4 characteristics क्या? Territory, है ना, predefined, a well-defined territory. Population, you can put a hyphen, write down ethno-linguistically similar, या ethno-linguistically homogeneous. Government and sovereignty. These are the 4 characteristics, essential characteristics of a nation state. Yes. And then there is state nation. So in case of multicultural societies, multicultural societies, in case of multicultural societies we use the phrase state nation. तो अगर इंडिया को आपको एग्जाम में लिखना है कोई आंसर, I generally suggest do not use on your own, do not go ahead and use terms like state nation. देखो GS में आंसर लिख रहे हैं, जरूरत नहीं है इसको अपने आप से लिखने की. Until and unless somebody asks you, in that case use this phrase. You should know what it means, you should understand it. Yes, but let us not try and show off our knowledge. है ना, क्योंकि as I told you, it is a term of more recent origin. ठीक है, तो हम है ना नेशन स्टेट ही बुलाते रहेंगे अपने आप को. एग्जाम में जब आप आंसर लिख रहे हो उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. Nobody is going to say no, you are wrong. Yes, we'll continue to call ourselves nation state, but if somebody asks, in the mains there is a question, in the prelims there's a question, in an interview they've asked a question, in that case, yes, please know that yes, we are a state nation. We distinguish ourselves from countries like Italy, Germany, France, which represent homogeneous societies. Yes, so we want to distinguish ourselves, and therefore we call ourselves state nation. We comprise several nations. Yes, so therefore है ना, these words, these terms, nation in making, are we a nation in making? In this context, yes, somewhere we can accept we are a nation in making, है ना, but we like to preserve our unique identities. We have some sense of Indianness. हमारा जो civilizational values है वो represent करता है हमारा Indianness, but as such ethno-linguistically very very diverse. Nation, Marathi nation, Marathas were demanding reservation, तो Maratha nation है ना. तो जो भी ethno-linguistically similar population है which shares a sense of belonging, Gujarati nation, Telugu nation, Tamil nation, Malayali nation, है ना, you can go ahead, keep on mentioning them. All these are nations. In fact, है ना, हमारे जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स थे उन्होंने बहुत स्टार्टिंग में, गांधी जी ने भी कहा था इंडिया कंप्राइजेस मेनी नेशंस. यस, फाइन. नेशनलिज्म एंड पेट्रियोटिज्म में क्या डिफरेंस है? मोर और लेस सिमिलर है ना. आप इसको सिनोनिम्स की तरह यूज करो, है ना. we share a sense of patriotism. There is patriotism generally individual level पे हम we are patriotic towards our own countries, and nationalism generally collectively बोलते हैं, लेकिन आप synonymously यूज कर सकते हो, इसमें कोई इतना खास डिफरेंस नहीं है. ठीक है. तो वही है, a sense of belonging, a sense of duty towards our nation, है ना. so that is sense of identity, sense of responsibility, sense of duty, all this is patriotism and nationalism. Fine, fine, fine. Then we are starting with our topic now. Election and representation. On a fresh page, give the heading election and representation. Yes, the first idea let us deal with is this relation between election and democracy. Yes, so can we have a democracy without elections? Yes or no? Yes, how, no, how, whatever. Can we have democracy without elections? Generally हम elections are thought to be quintessence of democracy, है ना, very essential to democracy. But can democracies actually exist without elections? Yes or no? Somebody is saying yes. Yes, why yes? देखो, there are two types of democracy actually. Yes, there is direct and indirect. In case of direct democracy, individuals, people, yes, the common people participate in lawmaking या participate in day to day administration as well as lawmaking. Lawmaking कह लो या governance कह लो, है ना. lawmaking तो नैरो है, गवर्नेंस ब्रॉडर है. तो when people है ना participate in on day to day basis in the regular day to day administration, governance, law making, this is direct democracy. People directly participate है ना and then indirect democracy, where people do not directly, they are not directly involved in day to day governance and day to day administration, law making. Rather they have their elected representatives, you know, they send their representatives who will now ensure all this. Yes, so people का limited, common people का limited participation है. Yes, their participation is limited to electing their representatives, and these representatives will be involved in day to day administration, governance, law making, etc. Yes, in case of direct democracy is also known as pure democracy. It is the ideal form है ना कि we should, it is the government of the people, by the people, for the people, so we should be directly involved in our in decision making which affects our day to day lives. Yes, in the day to day governance. Yes, but you find that this becomes very difficult to implement if there are lakhs and crores of people involved. अगर पूरा इंडिया gets involved in, कैसे लेंगे डिसीजन? कंसेंसस, मेजॉरिटी, मतलब कुछ भी नहीं हो पाएगा ना. अभी आ रहे हैं, अभी डेमोक्रेसी मतलब ये दो तरह के ही तो डेमोक्रेसी होते हैं ना, अभी आएंगे उसमें. ठीक है, तो अभी क्या है कि जहां पे डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी है वहां जरूरी नहीं है. डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी का एक्चुअल एग्जांपल देखा जाए डे टू डे लाइफ में तो ग्राम सभाज है. एट द विलेज पंचायत लेवल देयर आर ग्राम सभाज जहां पे एवरीबडी इन द विलेज who is mentioned on the electoral list are supposed to participate, and they will give their opinion. Ha, this is required, this is how we should do. They'll consult, they will do all such things. So people are directly involved in the day to day administration, day to day decision making with regards to administration. Yes. So this is the ideal form, but it is very difficult to practice when there is a large population. So at central government level, इंडिया में ग्राम सभाज में डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी का एग्जांपल है ग्राम सभाज, लेकिन एट द सेंट्रल लेवल 125 करोड़ पीपल, हाउ डू वी पार्टिसिपेट डायरेक्टली इन गवर्नेंस? यस, so it is not feasible. So though this is the pure democracy, this is the most sought after form of democracy, but you find that with large population it becomes not feasible, and in that case there is indirect democracy that we participate. And it is in case of indirect democracy that elections are quintessential, are essential. Without elections there cannot be indirect democracy. But direct democracy का जैसा मैंने एग्जाम्पल दिया ग्राम सभाज, एंशियंट ग्रीस में जब सिटी स्टेट्स होते थे, है ना, एंशियंट ग्रीस है ना, बिफोर क्राइस्ट, यू फाइंड देयर वर सिटी स्टेट्स. तो सिटी स्टेट्स में पीपल को डायरेक्टली पार्टिसिपेट इन डे टू डे डिसीजन मेकिंग. फाइन. नाउ व्हाट ही इज सेइंग कि डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी में भी तो इलेक्शंस होते हैं, उस डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे. जैसे स्विट्जरलैंड प्रेजेंट डे इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी. तो अभी डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी, अब हम स्विट्जरलैंड को डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी क्यों बोलते हैं? क्योंकि पीपल, कॉमन पीपल हैव मोर पावर एट टाइम्स देन देयर इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव. वहां पे इलेक्शंस होते हैं, वहां पे भी देयर इज अ नेशनल असेंबली, और नेशनल असेंबली भी एक 7 मेंबर एग्जीक्यूटिव बॉडी चूज करती है ना. तो वहां पे भी देयर इज एन एलिमेंट ऑफ इलेक्शन, बट द कॉमन पीपल एंजॉय अ लॉट ऑफ राइट्स, दे एंजॉय मोर पावर्स एट टाइम्स देन देयर इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव. दे वोट ऑन डे टू डे रेगुलर लॉ मेकिंग में वो वोट करते हैं, है ना, थ्रू रेफरेंडम्स दे वोट, है ना. दे हैव द राइट टू रिकॉल देयर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव इफ दे आर अनहैप्पी विथ इट. दे कैन इनिशिएट अ लेजिस्लेशन, है ना. तो ऑल दोज पावर्स आर देयर. बट जो हम डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी की बात कर रहे हैं जहां पे ग्राम सभा है ना, एंशिएंट ग्रीस में सिटी स्टेट्स, यहाँ पे इलेक्शन जरूरी नहीं है. ग्राम सभा में आज के दिन डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी प्रैक्टिस हो रही है इंडिया में, इलेक्शंस नहीं होते ग्राम सभा लेवल पे. सो इट इज नॉट एसेंशियल दैट डेमोक्रेसी टू हैव इलेक्शंस ऑलवेज. In case of direct democracies, elections are not always necessary. Yes, however, it is in indirect democracy that elections are very, very essential. Without free and fair regular elections, there cannot exist democracy. Yes. So that is the idea. So can we have democracy without elections? Yes, we can have. We can have direct democracies, as for example gram sabhas in case of panchayati raj institutions in India. Now the second question, can we hold elections without having a democracy? Give me example. China. Yes, China is a pseudo democracy, है ना. वहां पे people, though there are elections every 5 years, people do not actually get the right to choose their representative. Russia में भी elections होते हैं, है ना, China में भी elections होते हैं, but that does not mean that these are democratic countries. So yes, so democracy is elections are essential for democracy, for indirect democracy, but elections are not sufficient, है ना, for saying that a country is a democracy. Yes, so that is the idea. Let us write it down. Under election and representation, first subhead is election and democracy. Under election and democracy, first subhead is, can we have democracy without elections? Can we have a democracy without elections? Without elections, the answer is yes. Yes, comma, it depends on nature of democracy. It depends on nature of democracy. Full stop. Next point लिखो इसी में, indirect democracy citizens directly participate in day-to-day decision making, comma, law making, day-to-day law making, decision making, law making, etc. It is possible for small communities where the entire population can participate, for example, the ancient city states of Greece, comma, gram sabhas in case of India. Case of India. Full stop. Write down. इसी में लिखो direct democracy में it is also known as pure democracy. Second point, indirect democracy. First was direct democracy, and it depends on the kind of democracy you have written. So direct democracy, and now is indirect democracy. Write down, in it citizens elect representatives to make decisions 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 to and vote on laws and policies, and vote on laws and policies on their behalf, on their behalf. Full stop. In countries with large populations, with large populations, with lakhs and crores of people, with lakhs and crores of people, in countries with large population, with lakhs and crores of people, direct participation in governance is not possible. Direct participation in governance is not possible. Full stop. इसी में नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो. Therefore most democracies are indirect or representative democracies, full stop. Therefore in them election becomes the most visible symbol of democratic process. Yes. Next point इसी में लिखो. Most visible symbol of the democratic process. Full stop. Next point इसी में लिखो. Write down. Election is a method to choose their representatives. Yeah, is a means to choose their representatives. To choose their representatives. Fine. Fine. So we have answered the first question. Next, can we hold elections without ठीक है. प्रेशियस वोट लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. बाय कास्टिंग वोट्स. और आर वोट्स नहीं लिखो. बाय कास्टिंग वोट्स. पीपल बाय कास्टिंग. हम फर्स्ट पर्सन में आंसर नहीं लिखेंगे यूपीएससी में. तो आर, अस, वी, हम ये सब वर्ड यूज नहीं करेंगे. हम थर्ड पर्सन में लिखेंगे. ठीक है. और जैसे इसने लिखा प्रेशियस वोट्स. सो प्रेशियस वोट्स लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. हम कोई फ्लारी लैंग्वेज नहीं लिखना है. हमें सिंपल भाषा, सरल भाषा, डायरेक्ट भाषा यूज करनी है. So we'll just mention that by casting votes, citizen by casting votes, at regular intervals, है ना. So it can be 4 years. Presidential election in US every 4 years, है ना. But National Assembly elections in case of India every 5 years. So it can be a regular interval of time. Fine. Next question here is, can we hold elections without having democracy? Can we hold elections without having democracy? The answer once again is yes. Yes. For example, pseudo democracies, यस PSEUDO, स्यूडो डेमोक्रेसीज या नॉन डेमोक्रेसीज भी लिख सकते हो, स्यूडो या नॉन डेमोक्रेसीज such as China hold elections, but common people do not get their rights to elect their representatives, Now, they do not get true rights to elect their representatives. So yes, इसी में लिखो, next point लिखो, in fact write down the non-democratic regimes, are eager to portray themselves as democracies, to portray themselves as democracies. Fine. So election and democracy we have understood. Now is election systems. Give the heading as election systems. And election systems, we'll discuss the various election systems. लेकिन first line लिखो free fair and regular elections are essential features of indirect democracies या representative democracies. So they are in bracket, you can mention are essential feature but not sufficient. You understand? They are essential but they are not in itself sufficient to establish democracy. In bracket लिखो, are essential features of democracy democracy कौन सा? representative है ना. Are essential features of democracy but not sufficient features. So सिर्फ अगर फ्री एंड फेयर रेगुलर इलेक्शंस है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि डेमोक्रेसी है. डेमोक्रेसी बहुत ब्रॉडर कंसेप्ट है ना. डेमोक्रेसी इज एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ द पीपल, अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ योर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स, वो सब होना चाहिए फॉर अ डेमोक्रेसी टू एग्जिस्ट, है ना. फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन वेरी एसेंशियल. विदाउट फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन फ्री एंड फेयर रेगुलर इलेक्शंस होते रहे. are you actually free to form an opinion? That cannot happen. Freedom of media is very very important, है ना. अगर मीडिया फ्री नहीं है किसी कंट्री में तो वहां वो ट्रू डेमोक्रेसी हो ही नहीं सकती. क्योंकि हाउ डू यू गेट टू नो व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग एंड व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट वाज एक्सपेक्टेड टू डू? इट इज द ड्यूटी ऑफ द मीडिया टू हाईलाइट दैट. Yes, so you find that these are essential features but not sufficient features, है ना, for a democracy. Fine. Fine. So that is the idea. Now the various election systems, various electoral systems that we have. Yes, various electoral systems. The most popular system or the system which we use in case of India is first past the post system, या इसको हम plurality system भी बोलते हैं. और जो दूसरा सिस्टम है वो है प्रोपोर्शनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन का. तो अब फर्स्ट और प्रोपोर्शनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन में भी तीन तरह के सिस्टम है. Yes, you have a system where the entire country is considered a single constituency, where a country is divided into several multi-member constituencies. Yeah, there is this system known as single transferable vote system. Okay. So now what is this first past the post system? Yes, इसका क्या मतलब है? Yes, the individual who is able to secure most number, maximum number of votes is considered elected. Yes, in this system, this candidate did not necessarily secure 50% or more votes. है ना, ऐसा कोई नेसेसरी फीचर नहीं है. अ कैंडिडेट, अगर 10 कैंडिडेट खड़े हैं इलेक्शन में और किसी एक कैंडिडेट को सबसे अधिक वोट मिले हैं, सबसे ज्यादा वोट मिले, सबसे ना he or she has won maximum number of votes, say at 20% of votes this person has been able to get, है ना, rest has got 19, some has got 15, the other has got 13, है ना, some has got 12, so whatever it be, 1, 2, 3% of vote, then this person is declared to be elected. So a person who is able to secure maximum number of votes is declared to be elected. Yes, so this is what we mean by first the post system. In this system, generally a country is divided into several constituencies, है ना, हर constituency से हम एक representative elect करेंगे, and these constituencies are single member constituency, and from each constituency it means one representative is going to be elected, and this representative is going to be elected on the basis of plurality or maximum number of votes if he or she is able to secure, not necessarily 50% or more votes. Yes, now what is the benefit, what is the merit of such a system? Yes, what is the merit of such a system? तो ये मेरिट है क्या? रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ मेजॉरिटी. हाँ, प्रॉपर इस सिस्टम का प्रॉब्लम है कि अच्छा रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं है इस सिस्टम का. वील डिस्कस. इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड. सबसे बड़ा मेरिट इस सिस्टम का है इज इट्स सिंप्लिसिटी. यही इस सिस्टम का सबसे बड़ा मेरिट है, that it is very simple to understand. Any layman who has no knowledge of election democracy, yes, various electoral systems, you just say that yes, you go, whosoever candidate you like, you cast your vote, and whoever will get the maximum number of votes will win. So it is very easy to understand. It is very simplicity of this system is its biggest merit. What else? Huh? इक्वल रिप्रेजेंटेशन. किसका इक्वल रिप्रेजेंटेशन? हाँ, तो ये तो इलेक्शन है, तो चूज योर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ही है ना. और देखो इसका जो सेकंड मेरिट है, दैट इट हेल्प्स इन फॉर्मिंग मेजॉरिटी गवर्नमेंट. मेजॉरिटी गवर्नमेंट का मतलब क्या है? बेसिकली कोalition गवर्नमेंट नहीं होगा जनरली इसके थ्रू. समझ रहे हो? इसके थ्रू, क्योंकि ये आसान है. एनीबडी हु गेट्स मोर देन 50%, sorry, more than or the maximum number of votes polled wins the election. So there is a probability that the government that eventually will be formed will not be a coalition government. Yes, there is a greater possibility, there is a greater probability that the government would be a majority government. A single party will get majority of the votes and will have a majority of the representatives sent to the parliament. In that case, it will be a majority government, matlab it will be a stable government. Kyunki coalition governments are known to be unstable. Yes, so you find that there will be a stable government because generally a single party will be able to secure majority of the seats in the parliament or in the legislature. Fine. So these are the two biggest merits of this system. What is its demerit? इसका टाइम टेकिंग नहीं है, ये तो बहुत लेस टाइम टेकिंग है, इसमें टाइम टेकिंग है ही नहीं, जिसको मिल गए मैक्सिमम वोट्स वो इलेक्टेड है। अभी टाइम टेकिंग हम देखेंगे, दूसरे सिस्टम्स टाइम टेकिंग है। अब इसका डीमेरिट क्या है? डीमेरिट, अ पर्सन हु हैज गॉट जस्ट 20% ऑफ द वोट becomes elected. So what about the view of 80% of the population? Yes, so there is severe wastage of votes. इसको हम बोलते हैं वेस्टेज ऑफ वोट्स, बिकॉज majority of the population, their viewpoint is not represented. Forget majority, even if 50% would have voted for this candidate, what about rest of the 49%? उनका व्यू, क्या वो इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है? वो लोग, उनका व्यू को शुड इट नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड? शुड इट नॉट मैटर? yes, so there is a significant wastage of votes. Yes, so this is its demerit, that majority of the population or a large chunk of the population, their viewpoint will not find representation in the national legislature. yes, in fact it results in, ये तो मेजॉरिटी गवर्नमेंट है, इसका एक हम दूसरा बोल सकते हैं, इट रिजल्ट्स इन मेजॉरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट्स। मेजॉरिटेरियन मतलब क्या हो गया? मतलब जो माइनॉरिटीज हैं उनको तो चांस ही नहीं मिलेगा कभी अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव इलेक्ट करके भेजने का, है ना? तो अगर 70% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन से इज हिंदूज और इज सिन्हलीज, इन केस ऑफ श्रीलंका, हम बार बार श्रीलंका का एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं, तो इन दैट case the Sinhalese will get, more often than not, they will get a chance to elect their representative. Minority का representation will not take place in the parliament. तो ये हो गया majoritarian government. Yes, so these are some of the demerits as far as first the past system या plurality system, in which a country is divided into single member constituencies, and from each constituency one representative is sent to the legislature, and these representatives are elected on the basis of maximum number of the votes polled. They need not necessarily secure 50% or more votes. Anybody who gets majority number of the votes is deemed to be elected. So one who crosses the post first is deemed to be elected. It is a plurality system on the basis of which elections takes place. Fine. yes. Yes. What about them? देखो स्टेबल गवर्नमेंट है, लेकिन in context of what? There can be, है ना, there can be unstable government also, there can be a coalition government, or government might be elected, लेकिन वो कॉन्फिडेंस ऑफ द हाउस लूज कर सकती है। ये तो कुछ कुछ फीचर्स है ना पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म में, लेकिन इलेक्टोरल सिस्टम में ये अभी हम देखेंगे, ये सिस्टम में क्यों क्यों इसको बोलते हैं? क्योंकि एक सिंगल पार्टी विल जनरली बी एबल टू सिक्योर मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द वोट्स। लेकिन कोalition भी तो देखा है ना, सेंट्रल लेवल पे कोalition पॉलिटिक्स हैज इमर्ज्ड। यस, सो यू बूथ कैप्चरिंग एंड करप्शन तो कहीं भी कर लो, है ना? It is not necessarily under first past the post system, है ना? वो कहीं पे भी हो सकता है, यहाँ पे ज्यादा इजीली हो सकता है, वहां पे भी हो सकता है, लेकिन ऐसा कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। यस, फाइन। अब नेक्स्ट इज, या लेट अस फर्स्ट राइट डाउन, let us write down first past the post system. First past the post system or plurality system. Yes, under it write down in points. In it a country is divided into several single member constituencies. Next point. Yes, the candidate who secures maximum number of votes, a candidate who secures maximum number of votes in a particular constituency is declared elected. Who secures maximum number of votes in a particular constituency is declared elected. Full stop. Change the paragraph, same point. He need not secure more than 50% of the votes. Full stop. He just needs to secure more votes than any other candidate in the constituency. Yes. अब नेक्स्ट लिखो, इसी में लिखो मेरिट या मेरिट्स. अंडर मेरिट्स क्या है? Yes, it's simplicity. Point number 1, simplicity. Easy to understand. Yes, write down no special knowledge of elections or electoral system is required. Fine. Second merit क्या है? Results in majority government. That is a single political party is likely to secure majority seats in the parliament. Majority government वाले point में put a hyphen. Therefore stable government. More stable government. Yes. अब demerits. Point number 1, wastage of votes. Demerits में क्या है? Wastage of votes. Yes. Under wastage of votes में लिखो most of the votes will not be represented in the parliament. Yes. Second point लिखो. Write down. इसी में लिख रहे हैं the winning candidate need not necessarily win more than 50% of the votes. Need not necessarily win more than 50% of the votes. Write down. He or she can win 20% of the votes and still win the elections. यही है बिगेस्ट डीमेरिट. लेकिन हम जस्ट टू डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन मेजॉरिटी गवर्नमेंट एंड मेजॉरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट लिख लो. सेकेंड डीमेरिट, टेंडेंसी टू रिजल्ट इन मेजॉरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट्स. टेंडेंसी टू रिजल्ट इन मेजॉरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट्स. यस. उसी में लिखो द माइनॉरिटीज आर नॉट वेल रिप्रेजेंटेड. द माइनॉरिटीज आर नॉट वेल रिप्रेजेंटेड. The next is are not well represented, है ना. minority is not well represented. Next is proportional representation. Yes, proportional representation, the word itself suggests in proportion to the votes, है ना, in proportion to the percentage of the votes that a party gets, you will find representation in the parliament. So representation in the parliament will be on the basis of proportionality of the votes that has been got by various political parties. ठीक है. तो proportional representation there are of different types. One type is where the entire country is considered as a single constituency. तो कोई country को they do not divide into constituencies. ठीक है. तो जैसे कि इजराइल एंड नेदरलैंड, अगर वहां इलेक्शंस होने हैं, नेशनल इलेक्शंस होने हैं, इजरायली पार्लियामेंट फॉर एग्जांपल इज नोन एज yes, Israeli parliament is known as Knesset. So अगर वहां पे parliamentary elections होने हैं, then the people of Israel will vote according to their political party preferences. Yes, so they will vote according to political party preferences, and each political party which is contesting that election, yes, will prior to the election release a list of candidates. Yes, this is known as preference list. It is nothing but list of candidates by political parties, and it is released before elections. Yes. So supposedly there are 100 seats and to be filled in Knesset. So this political party, है ना, Likud consider करते है ना, they have released a list of candidates, preference list, मतलब a list of candidates prior to the election. So they have listed down 100 candidates, and these candidates are actually arranged in a preferential order. इसको preference list क्यों बोलते हैं? क्योंकि they are listed in a preferential order. मतलब supposedly this political party is able to secure 25% of votes in the national election in Israel. Then the first 25 candidates on this list will go represent this political party in Israeli parliament, that is Knesset. Yes, there might be 10, 20 such political parties who contest elections. So each political party, in proportion to the votes they have been able to secure, will send candidates from their preference list of candidates released prior to the election. So वो preference के हिसाब से है ना, in proportion to the vote they will send candidates, है ना, across their list. ठीक है, और हर political party to qualify to send their candidates to the parliament have to secure a minimum threshold of votes, जो कि इजराइल के केस में 3.5% है. तो हर political party which has secured more than 3.5% of votes in the election will be able to send its representative to the parliament. Fine. So ये इसको यही है आइडिया. पीपल वोट अकॉर्डिंग टू पॉलिटिकल पार्टी प्रेफरेंस. कोई कैंडिडेट के बेसिस पे वोट नहीं करता, और हर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी प्रायर टू द इलेक्शन विल रिलीज अ लिस्ट ऑफ कैंडिडेट्स organized in a preferential order which they will send to the parliament in proportion to the votes that they secure in the election. Yes, so this is the idea. तो यहाँ पे क्या होगा, यहाँ पे it will never be a majority government, it will be a coalition government. Yes, so whatever है ना, अगर even 50%, अगर लिकुड को मानो supposedly 55% of the votes मिल गए, लेकिन फिर भी जो बाकी जो गवर्नमेंट का हिस्सा होंगे, है ना, जो पार्लियामेंट का हिस्सा होंगे जनरली, है ना, दी रिप्रेजेंट. और जनरली ऐसा होता नहीं है इनके यहाँ ना, द 20-25% इज द मैक्सिमम जनरली दैट अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी इज एबल टू गेट इन इलेक्शंस. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे वेस्टेज ऑफ वोट्स नहीं है. इसका बेनिफिट क्या है, वेस्टेज ऑफ वोट्स नहीं है. यू फाइंड दैट मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द वोट्स कास्ट बाय द वोटर्स गेट्स रिप्रेजेंटेशन. माइनॉरिटीज को भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन का इक्वल चांस है ना, इन द इलेक्शंस इन द पार्लियामेंट. फाइन, सो दैट इज द आइडिया. The other type, when the country is divided into several multi-member constituencies, है ना, it is example is अर्जेंटीना, पोर्चुगल. तो यहाँ पे क्या होता है, जब नेशनल इलेक्शंस है तो each the country is divided into several constituencies. Yes, and from each constituency multiple members, है ना, जरूरी नहीं है सेम नंबर ऑफ मेंबर्स. ऐसा नहीं है कि हर कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी से 5 मेंबर ही जाएंगे. ऐसा हो सकता है कुछ कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी से 2 जाएंगे, किसी से 5 जाएंगे, वट एवर देयर सिस्टम इज. सो फ्रॉम ईच कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी मल्टीपल members will be sent to the parliament. Yes, now यहाँ पे भी a proportional representation है. तो यहाँ पे भी क्या होगा, political parties will come out with a preference list, but for each constituency, for different constituencies they will come out with a different preference list. Yes, and according to the percentage of the votes that the political party is able to secure, that many percentage of the candidate on the preference list will be sent from that political party to the parliament. It is same. यहाँ पे बस यही है कि single member constituency, यहाँ पे entire country is considered as a single constituency. यहाँ पे the country is divided into different constituencies. और generally multi member होता है ताकि representation हो पाए ना, proportional representation है. Yes, proportional representation मतलब कि देयर हैज टू बी मल्टीपल मेंबर कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी, मल्टी मेंबर कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी होना जरूरी है. तभी सभी जो लोग हैं एक कॉन्स्टिट्युएंसी के अंदर, है ना, सम माइट बी स्पीकिंग सम लैंग्वेज, सम रिलीजन, है ना, जो भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन है, क्लास से डिवाइड, वर्कर, लेबर, वो सब अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स भेज सकेंगे. यस, सो दैट इज द आइडिया. एंड द थर्ड टाइप इज सिंगल ट्रांसफरेबल वोट सिस्टम. Now this is generally the most complicated type of representation or the most complicated type of electoral system, and it is in India we practice single transferable vote system in case of election of president, vice president and members of Rajya Sabha. Yes, मिनिमम थ्रेशोल्ड अग्रीड होता है। तो अगर किसी को, जैसे मैंने बताया इजराइल के केस में, हाँ 3.5 है, अगर किसी पार्टी को 1% वोट मिला है तो दे कैन नॉट सीक रिप्रेजेंटेशन इन द पार्लियामेंट। हाँ बिल्कुल। मतलब प्रोपोर्शन के हिसाब से होगा ना, तो प्रोपोर्शन ऑलरेडी होता ही है। 5% से कम। नहीं, सीट ब्लैंक नहीं जाएगी, वो उस तरह से एडजस्ट करेंगे। हाँ, फिक्स कैसे करेंगे? ऑन द प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ द वोट दैट दे हैव सिक्योर्ड। ऐसा कोई है ना, बेस्ड ऑन द प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ द वोट, प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ द वोट विल वेरी, तो देयर नंबर ऑफ सीट्स विल वेरी। लेकिन हाँ, व्हाट ही इज सेइंग इज, सपोजली देयर इज अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी which has secured less than 3.5% of the seat. There were 5 political parties in an election, contesting an election. Supposedly, out of the 5, let's say 2 political parties have secured votes lesser than 3.5%. So remaining 3 parties are only eligible to fill the these seats in the parliament. And supposedly जो इनका percentage है, मानो किसी को मिला है randomly, let's say so there are 3, so let's say 35% एक political party को मिला है, B को मिला है 45% and C को मिला है, this is how much this is 80, so let's say 18%। supposedly ऐसा distribution रहा, ठीक है। तो अब ये क्या करेंगे, है ना, और 2 पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज थी जिसको 1.5% और 0.5% वोट मिले, तो ये एलिजिबल नहीं है। तो अब ये इसको क्या करेंगे, ये इसको 100% के हिसाब से एडजस्ट करेंगे। समझ में आया? तो ऐसा नहीं है कि 98 सीट्स विल ओनली बी फिल्ड एंड 2 सीट्स विल रिमेन वेकेंट, ऐसा नहीं होगा। समझ रहे हो? हाँ, तीनों प्रेजेंट होंगे पार्लियामेंट इन प्रोपोर्शन टू देयर वोट्स दैट दे हैव सिक्योर्ड। फाइन फाइन। यस यस, दैट इज व्हाट हम, वही मैंने स्टार्टिंग में बोला कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टी प्रेफरेंस के अकॉर्डिंग पीपल वोट करते हैं, इंडिविजुअल्स के अकॉर्डिंग नहीं वोट करते। दिस इज नॉट क्लोजर, है ना, दिस इज, ये डीमेरिट में आएगा। प्रमोशनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन का डीमेरिट है कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के हिसाब से वोट करते हैं, ना कि कैंडिडेट के हिसाब से, तो अकाउंटेबिलिटी कम हो जाती है इंडिविजुअल कैंडिडेट्स की। ठीक है, नाउ कमिंग बैक टू द सिंगल ट्रांसफरेबल वोट सिस्टम। अब सिंगल ट्रांसफरेबल, या लेट अस राइट दीज टू एंड वील अंडरस्टैंड दिस इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास, दैट विल बी बेटर, आई थिंक सो द टाइम इज over. So let us write down first 2 systems. Proportional representation, under proportional representation write down the candidates are sent to the parliament, are sent to the parliament in proportion to the votes secured, है ना, in proportion to the votes secured. Yes. Next लिखो इसमें, they are of 3 types of proportional representation, 3 types. First type, write down entire country, is treated as is considered as a single constituency. Example, Israel and Netherlands. Yes. Under it, write down people vote according to party preferences. Next point लिखो इसमें. Each political party is allotted seats in the parliament in proportion to its share of votes. Next point, each political party fills those seats by picking those many candidates from its preference list which was declared before elections. Yes, underline preference list. Yes, and people vote according to party preferences also. If you want, you can underline. Fine. So this is about when the country is treated as a single constituency. Next, second type. Country is divided into several multi-member constituencies. For example, Argentina and Portugal. Under it, write down in points. Each party prepares a list of candidates for each constituency. Depending on how many have to be elected. From that constituency. Depending on how many are to be elected from that constituency. Next point, voters vote on the basis of party preferences. Voters vote on the basis of party preferences and not a candidate per se. And not a candidate per se. Per se. Full stop. Not a candidate. They don't vote on the on preference for a candidate. They vote on party preferences and not a candidate per se. Per se. Yes, PARSAY. Two different words. Per se. Full stop. Fine. So this is the idea with respect to multi-member constituencies in case of proportional representation. अब जो ये single transferable vote है, we'll discuss it in the next class. We have a class tomorrow. So in tomorrow's class, we'll take up a discussion on STV. Fine. That is it for today then. Thank you. In the next class, we'll complete election and representation, and hopefully we'll have time to start with the next chapter that would be on executive. Fine.